What is going on with my look today, but hopefully we're not mad about it because I have to film like 4 videos today. Hello everyone, it's Gwen, and today I'm going to talk about the books that I read in June for the Olympic readathon. I was in Team Hades and I believe we came in 5th, which out of 16 teams, that's not bad at all. I'm very proud of our team, and I read a lot more than I thought I was going to, so altogether a good reading month. The first book I read was Brute Poems by Emily Skaja. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I will say I'm really not a poetry person. Unless it's something that I can kind of ignore the poetry part of it and just read it like prose, I'm probably not going to enjoy it. I don't like flowery kind of metaphorical stuff. I just want to be told the story and what's going on and move on. So this being a little bit more of a traditional poetry collection, I definitely did not enjoy it. I had to read other people's reviews and thoughts about it to even figure out that it was meant to talk about that relationship and breakup and stuff. I couldn't discern the meaning of the poems on my own. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, but it wasn't coming through for me. A whole lot of, even when I did know the meaning of the poem, it felt like there was a lot of sentences and verses that were just pretty words that when you hear them, they sound deep and meaningful, but when you actually try to think about what the person is saying, they're not saying anything. So again, maybe it's just a poetry thing, and if you enjoy poetry, you would enjoy this book, but it just was not for me. All right, next was the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tzu. This was translated by Brian Brown Walker. So I had kind of heard about Taoism, and this was really just a read because I was curious to learn more about it and the kind of principles of it. And I wanted to start with less of a book that kind of did a deep dive into meanings and more read the actual text. I appreciated that it was very much a kind of be happy with what you have. Nothing can be forced into place. We kind of go with the flow sort of life outlook. And I mean, that's a good outlook to have. So yeah, it was good. Read the text and yeah. All right, next was my first 5-star of the month, and that was Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. I was concerned I wasn't going to like this as much just because, like I said earlier, poetry, verse, that sort of thing sometimes doesn't kind of vibe with me. I didn't know if I didn't really vibe with this, I was going to pick up the graphic novel because I feel like I definitely would have done well with that one. But I did end up really liking it. Like I said, I could just kind of read it. It came across like more of a short story to me, so I was able to enjoy it completely regardless of writing style. If you're unfamiliar with the book, it's basically a verse book about a young boy who his brother was killed, and he's on the elevator on his way down to get revenge for the brother's death. And as he's going down, it's stopping at each floor, and phantoms that kind of are there but aren't are getting on the elevator and kind of talking him through what's going on and should he break the cycle of get revenge or not. But it was very touching. I loved it. I think regardless, I'm going to try and pick up the graphic novel version anyway, just because I'd love to read the story again, but with pictures. I feel like that will be a really lovely complement to the story. All right, next was my first reread, and that is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is obviously the book that inspired the Studio Ghibli movie of Howl's Moving Castle. I love this book. This is one of my favorites. I've read it. I've lost track of how many times I've reread it. If you enjoy the movie, you will likely enjoy the book, but I will say it's different enough that this will feel like a new experience with the story still being recognizable to you. And vice versa if you've read the book but haven't seen the movie. But this is about Sophie, who is cursed to be an old woman, and she ends up setting out to basically seek her fortune or find a way to not be old anymore, and she ends up running across Howl, who is supposed to be this fearsome wizard who eats girls' hearts. And it turns out that's probably not quite true, and just a whole bunch of shenanigans go on, and it's really sweet. Her writing and the story with these two, if she had gotten rid of all of the like kind of exciting bits, I still could sit through like 1,000 pages of just Sophie, Howl, Michael, Cassover's like just day-to-day life. It's so cozy. This is like my definition of a cozy read. If you haven't read it or seen the movie, either or, I mean, do both. Ideally, they're both wonderful. All right, the next book I read was Coraline by Neil Gaiman. I'd actually never read the book before. I'd only ever seen the animated film, and I did enjoy the movie, so I figured I would pick up the book. It was good. It was a lot creepier than I expected it to be, especially for like a middle grade. While it didn't give me nightmares as an adult, I mean, maybe if I'd read it when I was more in like the actual target age range, I may have been a little more spooked by it. But it was still a good story, a little bit slow paced. It's not something that I'm gonna want to reread, but I'm glad that I read it this first time around. If you aren't aware, Coraline is about Coraline, who finds a door in her home, and it goes to another world where the other mother is, and it's basically her life, but they have button eyes, and the other mother is trying to make everything perfect for her and get her to stay forever. But things probably won't be as good as the other mother makes them out to be should Coraline decide to stay. But the other mother resorts to drastic and sinister measures to try and get Coraline to stay with her forever. Alright, next I read Flunked by Jen Kalanita. This is a middle grade story about a girl who, she's one of the oldest siblings in the family that lives in a boot, and they live in a fairy tale land, and in this land the villains have been reformed and run a school that kind of is a delinquent reform school. Only when our main character gets there, and unfortunately I already forgotten her name, it turns out that the villains might not be as reformed as people thought. I enjoyed this. I think it's definitely one that it loses a little bit of its sparkle when you read it as an adult versus if I was in middle school, but I thought that it was really sweet and interesting. I'll probably continue the series, at least read the next book and see if some of the issues I had kind of start to iron themselves out. I'm still curious to see how the story unfolds. My main problem with it was it had a lot of not like other girl sentiments in it from the main character. I understand that this is the first book in the series, so it's very possible that as the series progresses and she grows as a person, that will start to peter off. There was a lot in this first book. I actually ended up looking at the publication date because I was fully expecting this book to be published in the early 2000s. That's the kind of level of it that there was, but no, it's published in 2015 or something. So like I said, I'll probably pick up the next book and see if that kind of starts to peter off as she grows as a person, because there was some signs that was happening in the first book, but if it's not starting to kind of fix itself by the second book, I probably won't continue the series further than that. All right, next I read The Owls Have Come to Take Us Away by Ronald C. Smith. This is a middle grade sci-fi with a touch of horror to it. This is about Simon, who is, I believe he's 12 if I remember properly. He's obsessed with the alien conspiracy theories, full believer. The book is kind of told in a stream of thought style from Simon's point of view, and it definitely took some getting used to, especially for someone like myself I don't like children that much. Not good with them, so reading from just the thoughts of a 12-year-old wasn't my favorite, But once I got into it, it didn't bother me as much. And once the story got going, it really grabbed a hold of me. So this is about Simon, who believes that he's been abducted by the aliens he's so afraid of, and that they put an implant in his body. And now Simon is trying to get the people around him to believe him. And throughout the book, we are not sure how reliable of a narrator Simon is. Is this the overactive imagination of a very nervous 12-year-old, or did something actually happen to Simon? This book kept me guessing until the reveal. Like, you truly, maybe someone else will read it differently. I could not tell whether he was a reliable narrator or not until the final bit when we were told. Ronald Smith did a really good job of keeping you guessing, and despite my kind of misgivings with kind of getting just thoughts of a 12-year-old thrown at me in the beginning, by the end of the book, I truly love Simon, and he's a wonderful character. I think you'll definitely fall in love with him, if nothing else. Alright, now to get into the manga I read. The first one I read was Mama Akuma. This is by Kuzushiro. This is about Seer, the demon, who is summoned by the little girl, which I don't remember her name. Sakura. Her name is Sakura. And she wants him to be her mommy because her mother passed away shortly after she was born, and she's never had one, and she's had to kind of grow up watching all of her friends with their mothers and everything. So she's decided she's just going to summon her own. So if you enjoy domestic stories, kind of day in the life with like a little bit of a supernatural twist, and stories of like children and motherhood are something you enjoy or don't mind, probably really enjoy this one. I mean, like I said, I'm really not into children. I'm not into motherhood. None of those kind of themes are anything I'm interested in or feel a connection to. So while this was cute, I don't have any desire to continue on with the story. I don't really care about seeing their relationship grow or anything, but like I said, that's very much kind of a me thing. If you are someone who would enjoy seeing that type of bond grow, I do think this is a series that you'll really enjoy. Right, next was a reread from my childhood, and that was the first volume of Nora, The Last Chronicles of Devildom. This is by Kazunaru Kake, and this is about Nora, who is sent to the human world to be the familiar of Kazuma? Yeah, Kazuma, and they don't get along at all. He is like your kind of stereotypical hard-ass class president, and he is like your rebellious little delinquent character, so they don't get along very well, but they end up having to fight demons that have come through to the human world, and the Dark Liege is trying to kind of push him into fulfilling his destiny. This was definitely a nostalgia read for me. This wasn't the first series I ever started reading for manga, but it's the first one I actually finished. I read it as it came out. I remember going to Barnes & Noble and picking the volumes up, and I would go with my mom every weekend and run to the manga section and see if the new volume had come out. As an adult, there's definitely better stories. This isn't kind of the best series ever like I used to feel, but I did still enjoy it, and it will keep a very loved space on my shelf, and I will continue and finish rereading the series. All right, next was another reread. This is A Terrified Teacher at Ghoul School by Mai Tanaka. This is the story of Haruaki Abe, our teacher, and he is a fraidy cat, but he unwittingly ends up going to be a teacher at a all yokai school. They didn't think to tell him that before he got there. So now he's dealing with his fear of yokai, learning about the yokai, and kind of bonding with the students, who some of which are also not really fans of humans. I appreciate that there's an underlying story that's kind of carrying through all of the series, even though most of them are kind of a little bit standalone, like episodic. The thing I love most about this series is this is the funniest series I think I've ever read. I laugh out loud several times throughout every volume. His bond with the students is really funny. If you want a very low-key, hilarious school life manga, I can't recommend this one enough. All right, next is one that I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about, but that is MadKryoSuzuri by MadKryoSuzuri. This is the war manga. I will say lots of trigger warnings, rape, violence, general sexual assault, gore. This is not like a romance. I think it was I think people were thinking it was going to be. This very much gives me, I don't know if y'all would have read it, but Killing Stalking vibes, where the main people happen to be gay, but the story is not a gay romance. It is a horror. And that's the main thing, is it is a horror, body horror specifically for this one. So if you're going into it expecting romance or any kind of healthy relationship, this is not the series. That being said, I happened to really love Killing Stalking, just as I am already in love with this. This kind of goes in telling you, this is one of the stories where it tells you how the series is going to end, and you're now on the ride of figuring out how we go from point A to point B. But this is about Makoto, who has a fetish where he wants to eat someone, and he ends up summoning a demon who's a very high-ranking demon, and the demon basically says, I will allow you to eat me, in exchange I get your soul. So everything happens, and then Makoto gets taken to hell with the demon, and now he's kind of training to be the underling of that demon, and the demon's hoping to turn him into another demon. But I am so interested to see how we go from here to the final part that they've already kind of told us what's going to happen. The art is absolutely stunning. I pre-ordered the second volume the second I finished this one. So yeah, if you like body horror, you don't need to kind of enjoy the kink. It's not centered around a healthy kind of gay romance. Don't go into it for that. And then all the content warnings I said before. Next is The King's Beast by Ray Toma. This is in the same universe as the author's other work. I don't remember what that work was called, but I haven't read it, and that didn't stop me from being able to enjoy this. The world is interesting. I'm curious to see kind of how the mystery is solved, and I'm getting a little bit of a romance vibe, perhaps a slow burn romance, and I'm all here for it. But this is about Rangetsu, who is pretending to be a boy because male Ajin are sent to be beast servants for the nobles, and her brother was chosen to be one, but then she gets word that he was killed. She believes that the prince that he went to serve is the one who killed him, so now she is trying to become a beast servant by pretending to be a boy so she can get to that prince. And mystery unfolds and potential romance. The art is lovely. This wasn't something that blew me out of the water, but it's definitely a charming, interesting book that I'll be continuing. All right, next is How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. This is a manga. I believe that was based on a light novel. So the manga is by Satoshi Ueda. The original work was by Dojomaru, and the character design was by Fuyuyuki. This is an isekai about Kazuya, and he is taken from our world just as he's about to enter college, and is taken to this kingdom because they were told by their enemies, essentially, summon a hero for us and we won't destroy you. What ends up happening is he uses his kind of modern knowledge of economy, city building, all of that, and starts helping to fix the kingdom's problems. So the king decides, hey, he's doing a way better job than I am. Here, you can marry my daughter, and also I'm ceding the throne to you, and then just bails. So he ends up stuck the king of a kingdom in a world that's just some fantasy world he's never been to. He goes along with things a lot better than I probably would, but this is interesting. I wouldn't want to stick around for a long series for this, but if this is probably 20 volumes or shorter, I think this will really like stay a strong series. I'm interested to see how the main kingdom kind of flourishes, how the relationships between kingdoms happen, and his relationship with people around him. I will definitely be picking up the next one in the series. Okay, now for my only 1 star of the entire month, Wild Wild Wildlife by Hiyoko Kijima. This is a very adult book, as you can probably gather from the cover. I didn't enjoy this, and I'm willing to write most of it off because a lot of it centered around kinks that I'm not into and also generally make me a bit uncomfortable, such as non-con. There's some student-teacher relationship. They're both adult in that story, but the student-teacher thing is still a little weird for me. And a little bit of humiliation fetish. So, I mean, that's all well and good if that's what you're into and everyone involved is consenting adults, great. It's just not for me. The one thing that, no matter what the other stories were, the second story, there's a brothel where the sex workers are androids who are all young boys, like probably just hitting puberty, obviously sleeping with an adult clientele, and I will never be swayed from the fact that pedophilia is not a kink. It's not okay. It will never be okay. There's no capacity in which it will ever be even remotely acceptable. So with the fact that there was a story in here that was kind of pushing it off as just a kink, no. I can't recommend this then. 1 star. I don't care how good the rest of it would have been. It's not okay. All right, Onward and Upward. We have Even Though We're Adults by Takako Shimura. This is about our 2 ladies here. This is a sapphic romance. They meet in a bar, have an instant, deep connection. They meet and talk to each other, only to find out that this one is married. So I will say, if things like cheating make you very uncomfortable, probably not the one for you. I'm curious to see how this goes. I think it's going to be a very sweet, if not very heartfelt and touching romance. And the last book I read for the month was Sasuke and Miano. This is by Sho Harusono. This is very cute. It's kind of just a daily school life about these 2 boys kind of blossoming romance. It's very cute. It's basically, he is a BL fanboy, and he kind of inadvertently started getting him to read it, and he now has a crush on him. And this one, despite being a BL fanboy, is a little too dense to realize that he's in the middle of his own BL love story. I'm thinking this is going to be a bit of a very cute, a little bit funny, slow burn romance. Seems very pure and adorable. I can't wait to see how their romance blossoms too. So that is it. That's all the books I read for June. Did you also read any of these? Have you read them in the past? Do you want to read any of these in the future? What was the favorite book you read in June? I would love to know. Let's talk. I love talking about books. So I will see you in the comment section. You can subscribe, like, whatever if you want to, and I will see you next time. Bye!